Welcome to Drinkin Bros podcast. Kids, I want to start off the show with an apology. We got Tommy Stoner on, the CEO of the Special Operators Transition Foundation. We did an amazing event with you last year.
Wait, why are you apologizing?
I'm apologizing because I was late today, and it is unprofessional. And the reason why you're here is obviously to talk about your company and what you do and how you're helping veterans. This is a nice segue into why I was late today. So the audience knows I lost the first floor of my house during those storms, and they're repairing it. If I could hire veterans to do every aspect of everything in my life, but like literally any fucking position, you name it, I would, because I know they're going to be on time. I know the work is going to be great, and I don't have to worry about it. Instead, what I'm stuck with is Austin people's time, where it's a city that is exploding. Everybody's late because they can be. They don't really care. And, you know, when they show up, they show up. Your time doesn't matter. But if you miss them, it's like Tom Hanks in The Money Pit, where you're not seeing the last guy I missed. I didn't see him for 8 days. So you have to sit there and wait around. I'm rarely late for anything, and I apologize for wasting your time. Look, however, if I had veterans working on my house today, I would not be late whatsoever.
No. Also, don't bring up Tom Hanks unless you're willing to talk about Hooched. Honestly. Oh, you know how it is here.
Yeah.
So we've got this idea for an entire television network where all the characters are replaced by Hooch from Turner and Hooch. Mm-hmm. All of them. So you can imagine it's Fast and Furious, but it's instead of Vin Diesel, it's Hooch. Right.
I guarantee you, within 2 hours of this show airing, you will be hooched in this.
Oh, yeah.
In this two-shot. Somebody will hooch Tommy in this two-shot.
Before the show's over, it'll happen. Nice. I promise you that.
Yeah. Because pull that microphone just a tad up towards your face there. That's great. That's great. Yeah, because what you do is unbelievably important. You are helping veterans transition once they get out of the military into great jobs. Not just working at wherever and then, hey, hope for the best, right?
Yeah, careers. We do careers. We don't do jobs.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about Special Operators Transition Foundation before. Obviously, it's Rob O'Neill's charity organization, and the big golf tournament we did last year with Kid Rock and John Daly, that was what it was all about.
Yes.
So we were talking before the show about some of the things that went down there. Now, Mr. Daly enjoys a nice beverage, a crisp beverage in the morning. But so there happened to be you can talk more about this, but you mentioned there might have been a little, traffic jam at the ninth hole because we were there, and then right next to us was a liquor company, and then I think Jim Beam or somebody was right next to them. Yeah. So all the partying was kind of happening right down there.
Things got real dicey later on in the day for us. When we started off, because you don't know where everybody's start hole is going to be on one of these charity golf things.
Start,
yeah, shotgun start. We took a shotgun to the face when John Daly rolled up with Kid Rock as our first. I mean, it was like 10:30 a.m. and it was like, oh my God. So we were pounding booze with those guys.
Yeah, it was within 20 minutes of it starting.
Yes. And that led on to the rest of the day, and people were like, how are you still alive? Giorgio, who's not here today, was on. He's in LA doing a show with Dana White right now with Chuck Liddell for the Icebreakers podcast. He at 6 o'clock, as soon as the last player had come through, he was like, I'm all done. I'm going back to the hotel. I can't take this anymore. Dead serious. And we didn't see him the rest of the night.
I missed a great evening.
That was one of the craziest parties ever that happened later on that evening. Yeah. And it was one of those once in a lifetime things where you pinch yourself of I can't believe I'm here and this is actually going on right now.
Yeah, well, it's going to happen again next September. So it's an annual thing out there in Nashville.
Yeah, are we invited back after last year?
100%. 100%. We might have to move some of those booze stands maybe a little bit down.
It's like we're the problem kids in class, and now we're being separated and having our desks move apart. That's a bunch of fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it is. Look, we raged. I'll tell these stories now because I don't know if we told them then. I think it's fine now. I think we're past the statute limit. Yeah, statute of limitations.
Plus you're in Texas.
Yeah, it's true. There's nothing they could do here.
10:30 a.m. I went over to introduce myself to John Daly and say, hey, we'll be doing an interview on 9 or whatever. Again, shotgun start. We don't know where these people are going to be. And he's like, great. Drinkin Bros, right? And I go, yeah. And he goes, have a little something to get the engines going. He had a white styrofoam cup. It was
the 32-ounce styrofoam cup.
Yeah,
Big
not
boy.
small, not small.
big boy cup.
Or the 24. That was the 24-ounce, yeah.
And he goes, why don't you have a little sip of this to get you going? And I was like, all right, cool. Nothing in it, no ice, no nothing, just clear. I drink it straight vodka.
Straight room temperature vodka.
Correct. He's not wearing shoes or socks in a golf cart that is fashioned after the car.
Generally.
Generally
Yeah.
in
that was-
Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
That was Kid Rock.
That's Kid Rock's car, yeah.
That was,
Right.
that was
Well,
his golf car.
Kid Rock actually showed up in the General Lee, the actual car.
Yep.
And then he got out of that car and walked over to a golf cart, which was also the General Lee, which is kind of a big flex. To be honest, if I had a
Huge flex.
if I had a golf cart that looked exactly like my actual car that I drive, that's pretty funny, right?
And when the actual car that you drive,
Yeah.
The generally.
It is, yeah.
it is,
actually
and that's important for the audience. The bigger flex is it's actually the real General Lee from the TV show Dukes of Hazzard.
I think
and then
there
he
were
had
three of them, and he's got one of them, yeah.
correct, and then he's got a golf cart made right after that. So that was at 10:30 in the morning, straight vodka. I was like, "Whoa, my God!" And I go, "What the fuck, bro?" And he goes, "Got to beat cancer somehow, kid." And then I was like, "Oh shit!" I was unaware he had cancer.
Yeah, he announced it either right before that or right after that.
Oh, he ended up talking about it on our show.
Yeah.
And so he said he was going through treatments and everything else, and still an unbelievable hell of a guy and all that other shit. And then Kid Rock shows up. We're drinking Coors Lights, and then we go to the other tents. Wraps about 6, like I was saying earlier. Our producer went home and physically blacked out in bed. Dan and I went inside, and he goes, Kid Rock was like, "Hey man, let's go down and hang out in the clubhouse." So I looked at Dan and I'm like, "Dude, I'm gonna give 100 to the bartender. I'm gonna take a 12-pack of Coors down there." And Kid Rock ended up playing acoustic guitar for.
Yeah, that's when he's down with all the musicians who are warming up for the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's in the locker room jamming with these guys before they went up to do the.
It was
do the
like
event.
four or five of us, and it went on for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Once word started to trickle out of like, holy shit, Kid Rock is just playing acoustic guitar inside of
In the men's locker room.
Yes.
So they're all the women. There are women down there in the men's locker room. So what's going on down here?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh shit, this is crazy.
Actually, I think I bumped into you because I'm like, hey, what is going on down here? And you're like, oh, Kid Rock's jamming. I'm like, right.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I had to piss because it was a long day of drinking, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to leave because you're like, dude, I don't know that I'll ever see this again.
Yeah,
this is 4 feet in front of my face, and it's amazing. Then we get out, we start doing more shots with everybody hanging out, partying. John Daly gets on stage, starts doing karaoke.
Yeah. Knocking on heaven's door.
Yes,
Yeah.
dude, yes.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And he was good.
he was good, real good. And people were just like, oh my God. But you're starting to get to that level of drunk where you're crying for other people and you're like, man, am I crying for what I'm seeing or like how fucked up I am versus what is inside my mind of what my dreams are?
Yeah.
Because this is what you dream of where you're like, dude, I'd love to get rocked with John Daly and have him sing Knocking on Heaven's Door.
It was a great event.
Great event.
Yeah.
And then Lee Westwood tops it off. This story we have told where
Greenwood.
Lee
Westwood
yeah,
is
I'm
a
sorry.
golfer,
Well,
but-
we just watched the Masters, and I had money on him in the first round, so I apologize. But we were at a golfing event. Lee comes up and he starts singing "Proud to Be an American." I thought it was fake because I couldn't see him. He's a shorter man,
Yeah, he's a smaller guy. Yeah.
smaller guy. Couldn't see him. I thought for sure. I was like, man, whoever's doing that is one of the best karaoke artists of all time. So I popped back in and get a drink, and I came back out, and they're like, it's really him. And that's when I grabbed Dan. I'm like, Dan, you're not going to believe this shit.
Yeah.
And he was singing Proud to Be an American. Everybody was standing up, and I mean, now that's when the tears came down.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is fucking incredible.
The only thing it was really missing, I think, was Hunter Biden. But I've got a strategy to get him there next year. It's grated Parmesan cheese. I think this will work.
Oh, no way. Is he going to smoke that off the carpet?
We'll see. I mean, he's at least going to dig through the carpet to find it, and then we'll get him.
Yeah,
Right.
I think
We can capture him like a Pokemon and then bring him to the event.
I think that would be the best route to get Hunter. Would you allow Hunter Biden to come in and play?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I mean, let's face it, that's a tough one. Don't put me in that dilemma.
I say give it a go. If you're
Give it a go.
if you're looking from a party perspective,
Is he going to write a check for the service members?
yes,
Yeah.
I think he would.
Yeah, but the money may come from China though, so you got to be careful.
Isn't
I mean, it
everything
doesn't
coming
really
from China
matter.
right now?
It doesn't
So-
really matter. So
Yeah.
as long as we're getting it.
As long as you're getting it, who gives a shit, I guess, where it's coming from, right?
It's all about a good time.
My fan page guy is saying that he only does shredded parm. So sorry, I'll upgrade this to the shredded, a little pack of shredded cheese. Although you got to keep that refrigerated. This is good at room temp.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Stable.
Yeah,
good to go.
No, it was a great event, and you guys are doing an event this week here in Austin, right? A little meet and greet with some local folks, with some of your veterans. I guess what do you call them? Clients? What do you call
We call them fellows. The folks in our program and stuff. The veterans, our program. Yeah. So when we go into a new market, we call it a torch event, kind of like the Pathfinders of World War II. So it's a torch, and whenever we have a demand to get into a new market, in Texas, we've got a ton of demand from our operators who are getting out to come to this location. So we do an event to come in and meet leaders and just people inside those market areas and talk about our program, so they understand what we do and the potential that these operators can bring to their business, and make those connections so we can come in with kind of bigger events. Because what we like to do outside of these networking meet and greets, actually come and do workshops. So get these folks inside companies for a day or so they can actually see what these companies do, and also for these leaders to meet them. Because you were talking about, hey, you get a veteran, you talk to them, right? And you kind of, particularly these type A triple plus operator type people, right?
Yeah.
So you just have a conversation with them. You're like, yeah, that's a great guy. So let's take a chance on him. So we like to come into the market, do those meet and greets inside the companies, get exposure to those companies. Then we also do fundraisers, much like our golf event, to kind of keep the mission going, because we have a very high touch program that we run for these operators that lasts in some cases over a year. So executive coaching, working with them so they can rebrand themselves, translate what they do, and then we actually bring them to events, like the events here in Nashville, where we run workshops in conjunction, and then make those connections. And if we need to, we'll actually get these operators to these locations so they can meet these business. So a very high touch program. So
yeah, and it's crazy to me that you even have to do this.
Yeah.
Because with the life experience you gain overseas, especially with special operators, right? Like, I mean, come on. Is there anybody on this earth who is more prepared for a curveball in life than them, for real? Like, is there anybody else? Like, would you rather trust a kid coming out of fucking UCF, like Dan, like that piece of shit over there?
Man.
Or would you rather somebody who just came back from Iraq and was just like, hey man, I just led an entire unit and fuck shit up? Like,
well, that's the hardest part, is actually getting folks to hit, that I believe button, right? It's just that you get somebody and it's like, hey, how are they going to be a salesman, right? They don't have any sales experience. I got asked this question 2 weeks ago. What sales experience do you have? I don't know. You ever tried to convince two tribal leaders on two sides of the river to stop shooting each other for a hot 5 minutes so you can get something accomplished? You ever been to an embassy trying to convince an ambassador that, this security program is right for that country, right for our security, right for what the nation's trying to do? I mean, there's tons of these skills that are just overlooked, right? Project management, operations management, all kind of product management. And oh, by the way, even if they don't know it, operators, great veterans, are going to pick it up. They're going to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
YouTube it, read a book, or just figure it out, right? Through sweat equity.
Yeah, and speaking of figuring it out, I'll tell a story on the show that I've never told before, because a lot of people ask me, they're like, I don't understand, why most of your friends are military and everything else. First of all, the humor is dark, which I love.
It's good, right?
That's how we all get along.
Yep.
And I kind of met everybody, Dan included, and
By
Jared.
the way, that doesn't work in corporate America sometimes. So
it doesn't, but it you know your spots, right?
Yep.
And nobody really crosses the line. But I met everybody through Range 15 when we were working on it, and with Jared and those guys, as crazy as Jared is, and we would have drinks and do everything. Always on time, always woke up the next day, no matter how hard we partied, everything, like, always did the job. Never missed a date for anything. Go and do Range 15, the movie, and a lot of people had said, hey man, let's hire a lot of veteran crew members. There was a crew member who was stunt coordinator, which is kind of, they do the fight sequencing and all this other shit. It's important. It's a big job and it's important. We weren't stoked with the guy that we had. And Tim Kennedy, of all people, pulled me aside and he goes, fuck this guy, I'm gonna do this job. And I was like, what do you mean you're gonna do this job? Like, you've never done this on a movie set before, be a stunt coordinator or whatever. And he goes, let's have dinner tonight after the shoot. We were in the middle of filming Range 15. And I sat down with him and I had dinner at this place in the Valley. I'll never forget it. I'm just staring at him, directing this movie, and I was like, all right, you want to be a stunt, you can stunt coordinate. And he goes, yeah, how hard can it be? And he goes, I used to fight, I was overseas.
That's the attitude, though.
Yes.
That's the attitude for pretty much any complex problem solver from the military. My job was airborne infantry, jump out of planes and shoot people in the face. I spent about 1% of my time doing those things, and the rest of my time doing conflict resolution and leading people and doing sociological shit and learning cultures. I mean, what the fuck, man? It seems obvious, right? But maybe it's just not. Maybe you guys are doing a good job of explaining it to people now. I wonder at what point it becomes pervasive. It's a widely known thing. You would think by now, after 20 years of goddamn warfare, it would be pretty widely known that veterans are contributors to the workforce.
Well, here's when it happens, when we get enough veterans out there, in positions that can truly affect things. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's stunning, right? Like how many actual veterans are in the workforce. It's like 3% nationally. Right, and in top management leadership, right, it's less than 1%. So you've got these hiring managers and these people that can influence that, right, by saying, hey, we're going to hire somebody because they have all these skills. That's the problem. So nobody else is going to fix veterans' problems, right? It's like
it's
being out on a mission.
It's the 30 seconds out mantra. Nobody's coming to save us.
Nobody's come. That's exactly it. But we, the veteran community and those supporters, need to do that. So at some point, we're going to hit a tipping point. We got enough folks out there in those positions, right? These men and women out there who are like, yeah, I got it, HR or whatever. We're going to hire somebody.
Right.
I get it. They don't have any experience in supply chain management, but guess what? They've got tons of experience elsewhere.
Well, we're getting to a point now where the traditional, starting with the GI Bill in the 1950s, it took about 15 years for this to become a thing, but there was a point where you either were an unskilled laborer or a skilled laborer when you went to a trade school, or you had a college degree, and those are really the only two ways you get a job that turned into a career at some point. Now we're kind of circling back like the White House press secretary and deciding, hey, maybe spending $120,000 on a college education isn't the best idea, right? Because we're not seeing the dividends from that. So where are we going to see dividends? We see that we're in a creator economy right now that is high paced and it pivots very frequently. There isn't a better group of people on earth more prepared to do that, to work in that environment than us, right? So it seems like a natural fit. Now you guys are having tremendous success even during this transitional period. Your job placement rate is?
Well, we say it's 100%. Here's why we say it's 100%. Okay. When we bring folks into our program, they're with the program until they get placed, or if they make a decision like, hey, I'm going to stay in or go do something else. That's on them, right? But if they stay in the program, we're staying with them until we get them placed in a new career.
Right.
So that's why we say it's 100%.
And there's also there's data that you guys have shared with me about rapid promotion, and not just like not time hacks being met on time or even being promoted ahead of peers, like unheard of style promotion. Like somebody shows up in project or in supply chain, and all of a sudden after 3 months they're in charge of all the supply chain. Stuff like that is happening on a pretty regular basis.
Pretty regular. What we're finding is 50% of our folks are getting promoted within the first year that they're in their new role. Now, out of that, about half of those, I think, are career calibrations. They're like, hey, we brought them in here, and they're really here. Right. And then the other one is truly, hey, this person's like crushing it compared to anybody, on that equivalent level.
Right.
So that's really unprecedented. The other thing that we're pretty proud of is we're at single-digit percentages of our folks switching roles within 2 years. And nationally, it's like 65 to 70% of veterans switch, move to a new role, job, career within the first year after getting out.
So the idea is that you guys are doing a good job of identifying their skill sets and putting them in the right job in the first place.
That's right. Making sure that whether it's somebody, a company that we introduce into an opportunity, or it's one that they've went and found, we work with them to make sure that it's the right. So we coach them through that process. Like, if you evaluated the company's culture, if you evaluated the trajectory, if you evaluated the leadership, right, to get an idea of who they are, right, vice just looking at this position that they're offering you. Evaluate it just like you would a team, a special operations team, right? Like, hey, who's the team sergeant, who's the commander?
Right, of course, yeah. I mean, it's in a lot of ways, being able to pick your own team like that is one of the fundamental hallmarks of the special operations community, and it's because culture is so important.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that Black Rifle figured out really quickly. It wasn't just about hiring veterans. It was about, and that was a big part of it. There's one of our main goals over there was to make sure that we were helping men and women that served their country transition over into the corporate world, for sure. But another part of it was there weren't people out there that were better than these people for all the reasons that we've been talking about. You know what I mean? And it was something that we knew it because all of our ownership were special operators. They knew this there was no equivocation on that. They knew it for a fact because their lives had depended on it for the last 20 years, right? So it was a pretty easy sell for us, and I was really surprised, honestly, not to see some bigger companies jump on board with that. It was a shock to me, considering how much press Black Rifle got for the way it did business. I was surprised not to see that. So it's good that you guys are actually doing this.
Yeah,
and educating people.
I think the part of the challenge of the bigger companies, and it's just like the military, right? It's like you get a certain size and you just kind of become a machine in a process, and it's like, well, that's not how you do this, and it's like, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. So there's a little bit of that involved, and honestly, our biggest success comes from small, medium-sized companies, where they can quickly kind of get past that bias, right? And you got leaders who are really willing to make a decision, because typically a lot of those companies, the leadership is very close either to the origination or, very close to the performance of the company. Typically, if you go work for a bigger Fortune 100 company where it's lots of functions and stovepipes and processes,
and a lot of woke and risk averse people as well. Obviously, I mean, let's call a spade here. And corporate America's fucked right now.
Corporate America's fucked, and it's also educating. Like, as a civilian, it's educating them on what it is you guys actually did overseas and why these skills would be important in the workplace. Because to me, if I saw that on a resume now, having what I have done on like Range 15, right? When I started with this, I mentioned the Tim Kennedy thing earlier. When we left that dinner, I told my producing partner, I go, that guy's fucking insane. And I go, this will never happen. Tomorrow's going to be a disaster of epic proportions, and they have no one to blame but themselves on this one, right? Yeah. Not only was it not, but he was so good that I was like, can I just hire you for like the rest of the movies to do this? And he goes, man, this does not pay enough. Dead serious. That's what Tim Kennedy said. And I didn't know him from Adam at that point. Like, I think I'd maybe watched one fight, and I knew nothing about his background, nothing about anything. And then after the movie was over, they were like, you know what Tim Kennedy actually did overseas? And I heard the stories, and I was like, oh shit, for real? And then it all made sense. Yeah. Because that day on set, he was personally in charge of 120 people doing hand-to-hand combat shit with every single one of them, full makeup, everything. I think 50 or 60 people were amputees that day, and he made it all happen. And like this, the biggest scene in the movie, this fight scene in the movie, was choreographed by a guy who had never done that job in his life before, but had all of these skills that you were talking about overseas. And that was probably the easiest fucking day of his life doing that.
Right, yeah.
But you would never know until you actually work with somebody like that.
I mean, it's the average American, particularly corporate boss in America, who's got very little understanding of how the real world works. Let's be real, because a lot of those guys have either been rich for a long time or they inherited their position, which means they've always been rich. They have no idea what goes on in the real world, much less what a special forces operator actually does. They probably think about Rambo or some shit like that. And look, there's elements of that. There's SIF teams that are kicking doors down and fucking shit up all the time, for sure. Yeah. But a lot of what they do is developing assets and liaising, like he was talking about, between two warring tribes sometimes, and trying to sort that out. And in the meantime, also leading all their fucking soldiers. Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff going on.
There's a ton. And you remember the SEAL Team 6 hostage rescue maybe
Captain Phillips?
The one just one in Africa, maybe like 6 months ago.
Yeah,
right? They went in there. So fortunately, I happened to be talking to some business leaders talking about the program, and they're like, "Oh, that's amazing," I'm like, yeah, that's just one piece. Let's talk about it, right? You got these air crew who had to drop those guys off and go get them, right? And you get this air crew and they have to assess, hey, what's the risk of the enemy? Is my air crew ready to do this? What's the weather? Where are we going, right? So they've got all this planning and risk and evaluation, very complex. They had to get those air crew and all those to a staging location. So huge supply chain management, right? So you had all that, and that's from the U.S. on a beeper in hours, right? Yeah. Leading up to that, you've got all this intelligence development, very precise, business intelligence development, figuring out exactly, where he is, how they're going to get there, teams coming together to figure this stuff out. And it's really crisis management plan, right? Because the beeper went off and they're like, okay, we got him. And clearly, in these missions, there's stuff that's going on well in advance, trying to figure this out. But you roll this back from what people have, this picture of these operators, right? Which is accurate. And
they think they're fucking, right? They think they're knuckle draggers.
Yeah, and you're like, look, here's all the stuff it took just to make that happen. Yeah. And then you get beyond that, the preparation to get this team to this level, right? Whether it's the intelligence team or this logistics team, to get things down to where you're operating on these SOPs that everybody's working as a team, but you can divert from those SOPs when the situation calls for it, and people can do it like this.
Fluid environments.
Fluid,
that people don't understand. Right. I mean, there's nothing in the business world that will ever compare to being in the middle of nowhere with nothing but ISR having your back. Yeah. Like, there's nothing that the corporate world can throw at you that's like that. Right.
Yeah, you figure it out. I remember our first deployment in Afghanistan, my team went in. This is the early days when you have the huge support structure, right? We're living in this mud wall compound. We had no running water. We literally got water from the river in trucks. And, we had those shower bags that we laid up in the sun.
I'm sure you were fine. I'm sure your intestines were fine after that.
We were using filters to drink this stuff.
I don't know what the Afghan version of Montezuma's revenge is.
But we get these generators. They're like Chinese 220-volt generators, and we're trying to work up lights so we have security and power, so we're not burning 3 million batteries. And you got a 18 Bravo weapons guy, trying to figure out how to work on a Chinese generator, and dudes running cable. You just figured it out, right? We didn't wait on anybody to come figure it out.
No, you did it because you had to.
You did it because you had to. Yeah. You just figured it out, and you kind of, that whole military improve your position, right? Improve your fighting. That's what they did. But that's what these folks are going to do in a business, whether it's an operator or somebody else. They're going to go in and kind of improve that fighting position and just kind of make it better. What I found, right, is people, there's this byline of like, we want to hire veterans, right? We're going to hire 5,000 veterans this year. Mm-hmm. But then you're like, hey, what are those roles that you're hiring into? And they're like the lowest entry-level positions. And, as I told some of the folks in the company that I work for, I said, that's not truly, you want to kind of hire and integrate veterans. That's not being genuine.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like Starbucks' whole thing. I appreciate some of the stuff they did, particularly with hiring veteran spouses. That was a big deal back in the early days. But, man, I don't know that it's a great idea to surrounding places like JBLM and Fort Bragg to be hiring a bunch of infantry dudes to be in customer service. Probably not the best fit, dude.
Well, some
they're
going to
light somebody up at some point, right?
And it's fine. And there's folks that are the experience level to go into those entry. But if everything you're doing is like an entry-level position, and you've got folks in the military who are getting out after 8, 10, 15, 20 years, where are those programs to integrate those? And if it's like, well, we just got these entry, well, that's not really a veterans program, kind of end-to-end, right? It's you're kind of going to the lowest you have to. And,
well, you're just checking the box at that point, right?
You are, but there's some great companies out there doing great stuff.
Sure.
But that's my first thing when I talk to them is like, okay, well, what's your overall program? Is it all levels? Are you willing to take a chance on this E9 Sergeant Major who's been in for 20 years getting out and look at all the amazing stuff he's done? Are you willing to integrate him? Or is he going to go in and work alongside an 18 or 19-year-old just fresh out of high school or 22 years out of college? And if it's that latter, or if it's that lower thing, it's like you're really you're not getting it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I spend a lot of my time is just trying to help folks educate and say, look, here's kind of the capabilities operators have, right? And the special forces, the special operations community, our statistics of the folks coming in our program are really kind of off the charts, right? And it might be just because of our program, but you could talk to the others out there. But the enlisted, 70% 7%, I think the stats I was running yesterday, have bachelor's degrees. And it doesn't matter whether E5 coming out of the Ranger Battalion or, one of the folks coming out of Special Forces. And then, it's closer to 99% for the folks that have been in 15, 20 years. It's rare that I bump into somebody that has a bachelor's degree. And then you get 70% that have master's degrees, right?
Yeah.
You got half of them speak a foreign language, all the Special Forces.
You said it before, it's a very basic infantry thing to always be improving your fighting position. Now that permeates through all of our lives. We're always learning new skills or whatever it is. Like if you're running a business, especially these days with the transition into digital media and creator economies and things like that, man, you better sure as shit have somebody that can fucking pivot and fast and learn new skills on the fly. Otherwise you're fucked.
Yeah, and that's the case, whether you're an infantryman in the 82nd, you could be working on a ship in the Navy, It's just kind of, those skills and things are out there, and it's just really trying to get people to believe that, hey, look, you've got somebody who's more disciplined, right? In certain facets of their life, maybe not drinking on the golf course and stuff like that.
Well,
yeah.
Whatever. But we still show up to work on time. You know how many times
work, right?
I've run drunk more than most human beings,
right?
and there's dudes that have run drunk 15 times more than me, right? Yeah. So I would say I'm in the top 1 percentile of having run while drunk, and then there are people that have done that same thing probably 10 to 50 times more than I have.
Yeah.
The top 1% of the top 1%. I mean, not that that's a skill to have, I guess, but I'm just saying, regardless of how
it helps,
regardless of what happens, you're not going to see dudes like that calling in sick or making up excuses a lot, because literally the phrase "no excuse, sir," or "no excuse, sergeant" is drilled into your head, because it's not about, there is an excuse every single time. There's an excuse, but the only appropriate answer is there was no excuse. I should have fucking gotten this done, and that's the expectation. Right? If the expectation is, well, I'm going to try my best, then you're going to get mediocre results all the time.
Yeah, and there's companies out there that are getting it, and they're going after veterans in the right way, and they're benefiting from it, right? And you don't have to be, look, veterans, just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you're top 1% or anything like that, right? I mean, I have met some just incredible people since I transitioned and have learned a ton. But, as a general population, you're just going to get somebody who's kind of more mature, more disciplined, regardless of what service they're in or what they're doing. So take a chance on them. If you got two people and they're kind of like, and you got this veteran, take the chance. And the companies that are really doing that are benefiting.
Yeah.
They truly are benefiting.
I mean, think about the difference.
I got to see it firsthand.
Oh, yeah.
And it is night and day, and it soured my experience on Hollywood, because now I had to go back and work with these other shitbags that were just so lazy and entitled, or union about the break. Union.
The fuck is a union break? What the fuck? A break? No. Start doing push-ups, asshole.
It soured my experience after making that film. If you don't mind, I'd love to touch on something you brought up earlier about SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
I think, and Jared Taylor has mentioned this on the show a bunch of times, about people should get more medals and rewarded for things. I think it's the element of the fame with SEAL Team 6, because it gains press and everything else. That's what helps civilians and everybody else recognize how important those jobs are and what you're actually doing overseas, because then you're in it, right? Yeah. I don't think there's a person on earth, if you said SEAL Team 6, they don't know who or what that is and what they did, right? The first thing you think of is those guys killed bin Laden. That's it, right? So when you're going to help these guys when they transition out, and you're like, hey, I got a guy from SEAL Team 6, I'd be shocked if anyone turns you down. You obviously know better than I, but I think that fame helps a little bit. And if you celebrated more of these stories and people more, especially with books and all the other guys we've had on our show, I think the press element and the fame element helps a little bit.
Well, that's what I talked to. I talked to AJ Buckley about that on the show about 2 years ago. I don't remember when it was. He's one of the guys on SEAL Team, the show SEAL Team. And I was just going back about, we were kind of thanking them for running such a solid operation over there. They've got like Tyler Graves over there helping them out. They have a number of dudes that are former operators. They actually have active duty SEALs on the show all the time for back end cast. But the sharing of those stories and making sure that they're done accurately, it's not for the public necessarily. Now it is entertaining for sure, but telling those stories and humanizing those people, and also showing the the skill and the effort and the dedication that goes behind all that stuff is, it changes look, perception is everything, right? It changes the way people think about service members. They're not fucking robots. They're people that have to do complex decision making every single day, right? And still manage a family at home most of the time. It's not that they are intrinsically better. It's that they have the experience necessary to do this shit better than most people will be able to do it. It's really that simple.
But the problem is, us over here don't get to see that unless it is a huge story like SEAL Team 6 or a lone survivor, or something that has broken out into the mainstream where we're like, oh, is that what those guys really do over there? Holy shit.
Yeah, there's that struggle between, the quiet professionals, right? And this is a struggle in the community with a lot of the operators who kind of went public, right? In different, whether
because they get shit on, and Tim talked about it on the show.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that, and my response to that is, look, there's secrecy in the missions folks are doing, right? The American public doesn't need to know everything that's going on, but what they do need to know is when there's a highlight event out there, they do need to know about that. Maybe not in the mechanics for secrecy reasons, but they need to know that. They also need to know what goes into making these folks who they are. And it's really, if you expand that to different parts of the military, I had the opportunity to take some business leaders down to visit at a base, right? And once they got there and they're like, oh my God, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars for this education for people to kind of roll out. And these 22-year-olds are getting this, as the basic warrior leader course in the military, right? And it's just like,
it's like the average 22, 23-year-old in the Army is a sergeant in charge of 3 other dudes and has gone to more leadership training than anybody in corporate America by the time they're 50.
That's right. So highlighting the complexity of these decisions as you kind of get to these higher level operators and stuff, I think is absolutely important, right? Because here's who's going to benefit. Corporate America is going to benefit. America is going to benefit in general. And guess what? The Department of Defense is going to benefit. So I had a discussion with another leader in the special operations community, and and it's like, well, here's what we're doing to get integrated with technology, right? We're taking these officers and NCOs, we're putting them close to, the technology world. It's like, I got something better for you. Why don't you take these folks who are getting out, that are very passionate about your organization, and help them make a positive transition and deeply embed them as leaders within technology. So they've walked both sides. And they're going to be the people who spot and assess that new technology is going to be beneficial to you far better than that major or lieutenant colonel that's still wearing a uniform and is like fingernail deep into it. That's the better. And guess what? You're going to benefit by helping that positive transition and get these people placed. You're going to benefit because you're going to get speed of action to like, hey, there's something cool coming, and it's going to help specifically in this, right?
These guys know how to coordinate. They know how to work with people that they haven't ever worked with before, because that's the name of the job, right? You have to do that almost every single day. They also know how to do like real critique, real risk assessment, and then real red cell training, right? Or red cell planning. They will take a fucking plan that looks perfect and rip that bitch apart completely unromantically. Like it either works or it doesn't. It either works or it doesn't. It either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, how can we make it work? And if we can't make it work, what are our other options? I mean, they just all these schema that are so important in making business decisions are all in there. And that's why you see, and this, I honestly think, I mean, the internet plays a big role in it, but I honestly think the major successes of a lot of these veteran-owned companies are largely responsible for a lot of the creator economy stuff that's popping up, because people are like, they're copying the playbook. You know what I mean? I mean, how many leadership courses that are not job placement, but just leadership courses have you seen that are run by former Rangers, for example? Tons. I mean, there's tons out there.
Tons, and it's interesting. And it's simple stuff. They're not creating anything new. They're just rebranding what they learned in the military. So I worked in a major regional bank, a super regional bank, and I worked in technology. I don't know technology. I don't have a technology degree. what I use, is the Army and has these, if you're an officer, you get these little manuals you can buy in like the clothing sales that tell you how to plan. I literally kept that on my desk, and that's what I use to build technology plans and do project management, right? IPB is just analysis.
Yeah.
Right? So you change the terms, and that's why I train my team to do. I'm like, okay, they're not going to understand this. Intelligence preparation of the battlefield, and so I got to change the name.
Imagine you can get MacGyver in your R&D department. That's what we're talking about here, right? Like these guys are dropped into austere conditions with limited supplies and access, and they're like, well, we got to do this. How the fuck are we going to do it? All right, get that string over there. We're going to make something. You know what I mean?
I break the world up into like, there's some roles, right? Like there's this, I call it the expert role. And that's where you really got to be the expert. Like I'm not going to go back there on your guys' audio visual equipment and get going right now, right?
You could.
We don't know
look
either.
at these fucking guys back there. Look at Hot Bob and Fake Dan back there.
Florida, man, you piece of shit.
Probably could figure it out.
Yeah, they can do it.
But I'm not going to jump in an airplane and go fly jet fighter, right? Or go code an app, right? I don't have that deep expertise. But you go one level above that, and now you got to like coordinate these experts. Because at a certain level, you're not the expert in that. Having knowledge in that area is very powerful. Yeah. But at a certain level, you're not a coder. You've got to manage coders.
But also being dispassionate about the process and only wanting the result is so helpful.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a scientist. I'm leading the scientific study, and people are giving me answers, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Well, because you're not rooted in it, right?
Correct.
And that's actually was a benefit, and it was a benefit even the military sometimes, right? But you're away from it.
Exactly.
So it's
like, perspective. It's a 30,000 foot view, right? Yeah. Einstein used to say that if you can't explain something, a principle, a scientific principle to somebody that has no idea about that principle beforehand, then you personally don't truly understand it, right? So the idea that you put these people in positions of leadership where experts are having to report to non-experts who are experts in managing people, right? And managing situations and managing things like that. Then that expert, so-called expert, has to explain to this person that's in charge now exactly what's going on. It is a recipe for success.
Well, what's the end state, right? Like take an app. What's the end state? We got an app that does X. Okay, I really don't care whatever matrix looking stuff you're doing on your computer, right? It's like, here's what it needs to do. Here's the day it's got to be here. What do you need to get it done?
Right.
And then, hey, are you hitting these performance measures? That's it. I don't care whether you're developing an app or taking something to trial or product sales, right? And that's kind of what I get to when I talk to folks, right? What's interesting about the military is when you go up, you start to become, the military takes you broader advice, more specific. Whereas in a lot of
you become a
civilian
generalist.
careers, you become a generalist, right? The term general. Whereas in a lot of civilian careers, you become more deeply entrenched in the expertise. So it's a weird dichotomy there between the two. So, where you go is, okay, you're an infantryman, then you're in charge of infantrymen, but then you're in charge of a platoon that has fire support guys and medics and commo guys, and then you're a company, and you start adding more stuff in. At that point, you got logisticians, and by the time you get up and you're a battalion commander, or you're running a task force, you got UAVs, you got medical assets, you got complex supply chain management,
and you have no idea how any of that works.
You got helicopters, helicopters are reported into us.
Right.
I'm not, I don't fly helicopters. I don't know what maintenance is, but I know that I need 3 helicopters available at all times for this mission. I need this, so you understand enough about a readiness rate that when they're presenting it to you, you can ask a couple of questions, right? But you don't need to know the deep, dark secrets of all that stuff. It's the same thing in corporate America, right? And that was the thing that I really harped on with leaders. When I went to work at this bank, I had some leaders that hit that I believe button, right? They just said, we're going to try it, right? And they
finance is a perfect fit for these people.
I was in technology.
Either way.
So it was different.
Yeah.
But they hit the I believe button. They said, okay, look, we're going to hit the I believe button. And what I found was it's the same problems, right? It's like, what are you trying to, do you understand what you're trying to do, right? Is it clear to the team what the end state is, right? Do you know your piece of it? Do you know how those pieces come together? Do you know when those pieces come together?
The ability to report.
Do you have what you need to do it? And then how are we going to track it? Ready, break.
Right.
And that was it. And literally, I went in and was working in the data world, and there wasn't a day that went by. I mean, I still had all these green notebooks that I did not steal them from the government.
Yeah, you did.
But
remember, what are they called? Record.
Yeah, whatever it was. But those little square books that fit in your pocket, I just had a ton of those.
Yeah,
and
he stole all those.
Every day.
That's fine.
I did not steal.
Statute of limitations on that.
Yeah, you're good.
It's fine.
You're good.
So I just fill them up. I mean, people that talk to me about stuff, and I literally went home and I Googled it and watched YouTube. Like I learned data technology by watching tons of YouTube videos at night. And, you know, so I come in the next day and I'd be a little bit smarter, and I'd be smart enough to go, okay, that's the dude who does this. Right. And I go buy him coffee and talk to him and get smart, right? And kind of like you do with your
developing an asset, yeah.
Sure.
And developing an asset or whatever. And so day by day you get smarter, but what I knew how to do is kind of get a plan, and people are like, hey, is that going to be done Friday? And yeah. And it's like, no, the question is it going to be done Friday?
Right. I didn't get out of here with all that preamble.
It's like, no, it's going to be done, you know, on Tuesday. And it's like, well, it's going to be done on Friday, or it's going to be ready on Monday. It's not done on Friday, but it's going to be ready on Monday because you're going to work the weekend, right? Because there's a team ready to catch what you're doing. So it's also that hyper accountability, right? So I didn't. There were things I had to learn. Don't get me wrong when I went into what I did, and I had a great team around me where I went, again, because it was a team that hit the I believe button, that was able to help educate me. But fundamentally, I didn't bump into anything that I had not bumped into in the military.
Well, you had those schema in place already. I mean, the lowest level.
Except crying in a meeting. That was
that's new.
Did you fucking cry in a meeting?
Well, I didn't, but
wow. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it was kind of crazy. I went into this meeting, there were probably 15, 20 people in there, and it just became hot, and people are like pointing fingers. And I was relatively new. I think I'd been there just some weeks or maybe a couple of months, and all of a sudden, you know, one person starts crying, the other one starts crying, and I didn't know what to do.
Because of the heat?
You know, not the physical heat. He's talking about people are
going at each other and stuff. And I think it was one of the few times in my life I didn't know what to do. I really was like, I don't do. Give him a hug? Am I going to get HR? I don't know what to do, right?
I think the big part of why you personally are successful is your tone of voice actually fits your last name, Stoner. You have a very exactly future governor of Colorado. Yeah. The way you talk to people is very laid back and chill and everything else. And I would never known you were in the military.
You can't talk to a bunch of professionals unprofessionally and expect results. And that's something that is missing in leadership. I mean, you see it, unfortunately, in the military, there's a lot of yelling. And most of it is unnecessary, frankly.
I agree with you.
I feel like if I have to raise my voice, and I failed as a leader at that point, right? Because they haven't picked up what I was putting down, or whatever the case is, right?
You know, Rob tells a good story about Rob O'Neill, you know, about yelling in the room, and kind of when the guys are in the room, the expectation is everybody's yelling, hey, go to that door and all this stuff, and how he's like, it's actually hyper quiet because that's kind of brings calm. He's got a really good story if you haven't heard of it.
Is that something you tell people? Like, hey, coming out of like, look, let's change the cadence, let's switch it up here of your voice and everything else. Like, because when you go into these meetings, like, again, somebody like you,
well, the operators don't have that. I mean, they're kind of at that level of professional level and maturity, right? So they're, you know, maybe the Ranger Regiment guys.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, we talked about that. Well, I talked about that with the guy that wrote Stealing Fire, right? I'm not sure if you've read that book before.
Yeah.
Stephen Kotler. He wrote about one of his experiences with DevGru sitting on the catwalk and watching them go through, and he said he kept commenting that this seems choreographed. Because they're not talking, but they're all moving like one fluid unit, like they're attached by strings through this room. And the commander was like, I can show you that it's not choreographed. And he sent his team down there and changed everything, right? They're modular shoot houses. So he changed everything. The shape and sizes of the rooms, where the targets were, and had them go through again blind without any rehearsal.
It's a high-performing team.
Yeah, and they did exactly the same thing again without knowing what was going on. So it clearly wasn't rehearsed. They're just moving that way. I mean, you can't. Man, there's no amount of time you could spend with a civilian to train them to behave that way. I don't think. I mean, unless they went through all the same training, right?
It's because what you have with a team like that, right? Because they're a true high-performing team. You hear that thrown around a lot. Like, we're a high-performing team. Right. It's like, really? Are you? Right? I mean, do you know, the first thing is, like, are you aligned to a common goal? Do you even know what it is, right? So I went to this team-building thing once with some great people, and it's like, hey, we're a high-performing team. And it's like, okay, well, you know, what are we all working for? And it turned into like a 15-minute dialogue about what we're working for. And I said, that's step one.
Yeah, mission statement.
Right, it's step one. And it's like the SEAL Team 6 guys or Delta guys, I mean, they know what they're there for, right? Yeah. They know why they're doing it, you know, both at that macro, you know, and micro level, right? Like, hey, in the room, we're doing this. And then because of that common end state, they can kind of work, and everything is tuned towards that common end state to the point, now the other factor of a high performing team is you can self-actualize, right? Like, what to do. You don't have to have somebody tell you to do it, and self-adjust, right?
Right. The job of the man below.
You're supposed to, you think you're going right because you think the door's there and the door's over here. So that, okay, well, I was supposed to be the first guy, but now I'm number 2, and you just do it.
Right. Or, I mean, even weird stuff like you get jammed up in the door, so you step in with a different lead foot, which means you go the opposite direction now, right? I mean, there's all kinds of weird shit that happens very quickly with these guys. There's no hesitation. And I think there's got to be what you're talking about, having the same mission statement. And that's why, I mean, look, if you hire some business consultant to come into your business and help blah, 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 first thing they ever do, what are you guys actually trying? Don't tell me sell products, because that's bullshit. What is it? Tell me your mission statement. What exactly you're trying to do? And if they can't answer that question, you're, like you said, that's step one.
How do you anchor anything you're doing? Like, new product development.
Right.
First one, before even that, if you don't know what you're doing, how are you going to build your team around it?
Right. Yeah. Like if you don't know if you're building a basketball team or a fucking.
Who do you know that you need on the team? Like, personality, skills. Like, how do you know if you don't even know that? And it just goes downhill quickly.
Right. Yeah. And it is interesting to me how, I mean, we know so many tier 1 operators at this point, and I see their teams around each other, and it is so interesting to see how the different personalities always seem to come together. Like, there's one of each guy in all the teams, but I don't think they do it on purpose. I think it just works out that way.
It's just the way it is. I mean, even the SF team rooms, you get 12 guys, right? Yeah. It's crazy how different. In uniform, you sort of all look the same.
Right, yeah.
And everybody leaves the room, and you got a dude in cowboy boots, and a guy that looks like he's heading to the skate park.
Yeah.
Dude that's half in a business suit, and you're like, but when they're in the room, they're just doing what they need to do to get stuff done. And it's pretty neat to kind of see that kind of hodgepodge of America kind of smashed together, and it's intimate, right? You're deploying everywhere. Yep. I mean, when you're in the special operations in particular, you're with your teams and the folks in your unit more than you're with your family.
Yeah.
Right? And particularly during the wars. I mean, our guys were gone 9-10 months out of the year. When you really counted like how many nights they put their head on their pillow at home, they were gone a lot. So I mean, they became hyper bonded to their teams and stuff like that. But it is interesting, to your point, to kind of see these personalities.
I love that shit.
I mean, it was the same in the 82nd. Right?
Yeah,
you
for sure.
saw platoon, everybody's heading out down to Fayetteville. All of a sudden, it's the same thing. It's like Cowboy Bob's hanging out with the dude that looks like he just came
fucking straight up cholo dudes.
Yeah,
I mean,
but they're all just kind of
there's one of everything. Like no shit. It is. People talk about America being a melting pot. There is no greater representation of that than the fucking U.S. military. I promise you that. You straight up. Dudes playing World of Warcraft over here with Coke bottle thick glasses still somehow. I thought we were beyond that. It's 2021. God damn it. They're still using those things. Yeah. And, like skaters and shit. I mean, it's hillbillies. I love it. Just seeing all that stuff at the same time in the same place is hilarious to me.
It's all walks of life. Yeah. And, the more and more you can integrate these guys into like mainstream society and things like that, the more helpful it becomes. I mean, even with this podcast with Drinkin Bros, Jared was like, hey, I'd love to have a comedian come in and host. So we tried to do it before. We couldn't really do it, and I think this could go mainstream just beyond the military and everything else. And then with the coffee company,
well, you guys already have, in a way, right?
Well, now we have.
Now
he's talking about 2015.
Okay, 2015, we hadn't, and it was like, even I got calls from my agents and shit, and they were like, why the fuck are you hanging out with these guys? Like, for real? Because they were like, dude, Hollywood's not like this, guns, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, they're cool. The humor is identical to my dark sense of humor. But Jared had the foresight of saying, look, I think we can get this out to more people if we did this. Same with Black Rifle Coffee. I think if we do funny commercials and ads and everything else that is totally unexpected, that I think we can go out to bigger and bigger people. The success of Jocko's podcast, I think, is huge. American Party, the Andy Stumpf and those guys.
There's
I think
a ton of good people out there. Yeah,
I think it flipped that the military became cool again, where it wasn't initially. And I think it was more or less after 9/11. It felt like.
But it's like if you watch these programs, when you watch, now look, the attitude and everything in the technical skill that Jocko has as a leader permeates that show for sure. But he doesn't spend the whole time talking about his experience in the military.
No.
Neither does Andy.
Nope.
Right? Neither does Marcus on his show. Neither do we, obviously. I mean, we talk about all kinds of crazy shit. They're talking about life. And it's an analog to what's going on in the business community here. They bring something to the table that most people just can't bring. And in the entertainment field, it's been really great for us because people have these preconceptions about us, and then they come here and hang out, and they're like, oh, you're just normal dudes. Like, well...
Sort of. I mean, Dan's smoking weed all day long.
If they've been in that back room back
There's
there.
a gun on the desk. And there's a...
gun, Parmesan cheese, weed, liquor, whatever. But, I mean, but it's like, oh, you guys actually are really good at this shit. Like, yeah, dude. Like, people that have, like, been on Rogan recently come into here like, oh, wow, this is crazy. I'm like...
Yeah, what were you expecting?
Yeah, what did you think we were doing here? This wasn't in our basement.
Like an iPhone on a stand.
Yeah, and to your point, like, shit, I remember doing an episode with Marcus Luttrell where I think... we just talked about, because he's giraffes that live, he's got like all this land and he's got giraffes that live there. And I was
What?
Yeah.
How much would you pay to let me come over and punch one of your giraffes? I just want to give it a shot to the rib cage.
Have you ever seen a giraffe fight? They like whip their necks at each other. You don't want that heat, dude.
No,
I'm telling you. You'll get lit up.
Don't. And that's, I mean, we talked about that for an hour. I don't know if we discussed one thing from the military for an hour and a half. Like, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the other thing is everybody thinks, oh, well, shit, that's all they want to talk about. No.
Very rarely. What's interesting is you get like a bunch of operators together, and they may ask where somebody is or recount a funny story, but it's never about like actual military.
No, they're just
stuff.
talking about life and shit.
Yeah.
Just talking about
whatever's going on.
Stuff.
Yeah,
And they're just kind of, to your point, kind of bonding together with the like minds, and that's what Drinkin Bros really has done. I've seen it personally, just kind of watching what you guys are doing, because you get firefighters and cops and just normal people are like, hey, these are people that think like I do, right? So it's a form and outlet for them to be able to do it. But
yeah, it's good.
It's fun, and it's gone mainstream past all of the things, and the agents and managers who said that shit back in the day are really regretting that now.
Yeah, because
they wish they could have taken 10% of it.
They're all out of work now. All the old TV
them.
residuals are gone, so they're not getting paid from that shit anymore. So good luck, guys.
They're out of it. Before we get out of here, I've got one question to ask the two of you because something interesting popped up today. Joe Biden said that he wants to remove all the troops from Afghanistan. Thoughts on that? I just caught this news story here, and it sounds a lot like what Trump was asking to do and then got crushed for it. What's the difference here, I guess, and are you amped about it?
Yeah, I mean, to go into the difference, I don't know. I'd have to kind of look at like his plan. I know it's pretty aggressive. He wants them all out by September 11th to the 20th year. I'll tell you, I have tons of mixed emotions. Right?
Ceremonial dates for strategic things, probably not the best idea just right off the bat.
They'll rip it out. I mean, me personally, I have no doubt they'll do it because they'll do whatever they got to do to include burning equipment to make it happen, right? Because I personally watched some of that silliness too.
Yeah.
But, after having done, so many deployments there and years, right? Not days, not months, like years in Afghanistan, and having friends, lose lives there and lots of blood and capital spent there. There's that, like, are we giving up? And then on the other hand, it's like, after 20 years, if the Afghans don't want it, is it ever going to happen? Right? So I can't say either way because literally I'm torn, that torn about it. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens. I think it's going to be disastrous.
Oh, yeah.
Over there
my opinion.
On an epic scale.
Fuck Afghanistan and fuck Iraq. Yeah. We've done as much as we can do for these motherfuckers at this point. You know what I mean? If they're not going to take some personal responsibility for the state of their country, then there's really nothing you can do at that point. It's like trying to convince a fucking person with type 2 diabetes to stop drinking soda. It's not gonna happen.
And all these people saying, hey, the Taliban will take over. I've always hated that, after spending all my time there. I hate the term Taliban, right? Because there's no real
What does it
Taliban.
mean? Yeah,
it's a bunch of tribal dudes.
Yeah.
I guarantee you September 12th, you're going to have 60 factions, shooting each other in the face over there, right? It's not the Taliban. Now, what spins out of the backside of it, there might be, something that comes out. The Taliban wasn't that long-lived before we went in there and crushed them, right? So they would have broken up. It's just really in the nature of Afghanistan, the way it's broken up, and they just never had enough time to get past that.
I mean, Afghanistan's kind of like the American West in the 18th century. You know what I mean? A lot of very independent thinkers. that aren't too keen on having somebody else telling them what to do.
Yeah, Dan, if you probably can't see the sticker on Dan's computer, all politicians are cunts. So we have this
there's another one
hashtag APAC, right? It's been going around the internet, and a lot of people are flipping over to that side. When this story broke today, immediately Lindsey Graham, who we're not really a fan of, came out and said this is the biggest mistake, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because, his biggest donor is fucking Boeing. That's why.
Yeah.
Frankly. Yeah. Let's be fucking real about that. And this has happened with him before. We've locked horns with this piece of shit before, and we'll do it again.
Yeah.
I'm bored this week, to be honest. We're recording 4 fucking shows today, but I'm still a little bored.
But the wild thing to me is, it's exactly like you were talking about with the politicians, right? Trump tried to do this, and he got slammed by the left. Don't do this. That's irresponsible. You got blood on your hands, blah, 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 blah. Now, Biden's saying he wants to do this.
Yeah.
Now that Lindsey Graham, you're going to be blood on your hands. We should be there for 200 years, blah, blah. No. At what point do we have to just walk away from this and say, hey, we tried our best. It was 20 years. Fuck these people.
Yeah. Well, the people are fine, right? They want to do what they want to do, and it's not what we want them to do. Why should we expect them to do what we want them to do? I don't know. That's why George W. Bush, by the way,
without going too deep into it, that's where he failed. Like when it was a bunch of SF teams and just a few conventional units, we should have said, look, are you the warlords that aren't on our side? Yep. All right.
We're gonna go.
The day we decided to change that was the day that this thing got us.
Like, how can you take a moralistic approach in a society that has divergent morals than you do?
Yeah, that
doesn't make any sense, man.
They're different. Yeah.
When in Rome, right? So we should have done. We've done this forever, by the way. Working with the mafia, having Lucky Luciano was getting deported, right? We offered him the chance to stave off deportation if he could use his assets to kill Mussolini, right?
Yep.
Never happened, but that's a good deal, right? To be honest, I could deal with a little bit of low-level crime to get rid of a fucking person like Benito Mussolini, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That seems like a fair trade to me. And if we could stabilize that region by putting some assholes in charge, look, it worked in Iraq for a long time before we went over there and started fucking around with everything. Mm-hmm. Frankly, not that I miss Saddam Hussein, but Jesus Christ, he certainly ruled that country better than we did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what with regard to whether we should pull out or not. Absolutely, because there's no plan. We're just any additional life that gets taken over there or by suicide later on or wasted resources or whatever it is isn't worth a not plan, right? Yeah. There has to be a plan. If somebody came up to you right now and said, hey, I need $100, and you're like, what do you need it for?
Yeah.
And they had a good excuse, you'd be like, oh shit, here.
Yeah.
If they were like, I don't know, might need it. Fuck. You're like, get the fuck out of here. You out of your goddamn mind? That would be a completely unacceptable thing, except for when it's sending men and women to die in combat. Now, how fucked is that?
It's crazy. It's crazy, but yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Now's the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to?
Yeah, definitely my dad. As always, your dad's fundamental in shaping who you are and kind of guiding you through life. So, absolutely my dad. So,
that's awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Somebody in the YouTube chat here said you got a bit of a Yenzer accent. Is that true? Yenzer, like Pittsburgh.
Oh, no. Colorado.
Stoner, dude.
Yeah.
Stoner.
Yeah. Write-in governor in Colorado. So
your last name is Stoner, and you have the perfect voice for it.
So when I was stationed in Colorado at the U.S. Northern Command, I was a major. So, people thought it was funny, like, give them my ID and they
Major Stoner.
Major Stoner. Yeah. That's good. That's good. You should have retired then, probably. To be
honest. Probably did the write-in then and stuff.
Fine. Yeah, you should have walked off with that one.
Should have, right? Dropped the mic.
Yep. Instead,
exit stage right.
Jordan Wizards. We appreciate you being here today. More importantly, we appreciate you having us at your event. That was one of the best times we had last year. Hopefully, we can do it again this year and make it a yearly thing because that was a blast. Not only getting to know everybody and the story, but the party itself was out of control.
It was good, yeah. And coming on the back end of the year, a couple of things, if you don't mind, to kind of exit with on mine.
Fire away.
So if you're a veteran out there, you transitioning, there's a lot of services to help you do that, right? Whether you want to get out and be an entrepreneur or go do, become a coder or whatever it is, don't make that transition by yourself.
Right.
It's incredible. I still bump into people who are trying to get out, not reaching out for help. There's a ton of nonprofits, great nonprofits out there. If you're an operator, go to our site, www.sotf.org. Take a look at what we do. There's some other organizations as well. Find something that's going to support you. And then if you're in any of the target cities we're going to be in, go to our events page, look at what we're doing, and come on out to those events. Inquire, ask about it, come out, meet our operators, and help us out. And again, we're a high-touch program, so it does take funding to do what we do for these operators. So I love the support out there from the organization. I appreciate you guys having us on.
For sure.
Of course.
Rob, and you all have been exceptional champions for what we're doing and really helping us just kind of make our mission, which is to get these folks transition in their next career successfully.
And what we'll do is we'll put that link, Hot Bob, in the description, so that way anybody who is interested in what you do and your foundation, you can click the link. It'll be at the kind of right at the bottom of the description on iTunes.
You got to click Show More.
Yeah, you got to click Show More
on YouTube,
and then click it, and you can find more information. That we'll put the link in there. And if you want to give us a 5-star review and a quick thing on iTunes, feel free. It really helps out. We appreciate you being here, Tommy. You're just
absolutely.
A cool fucking dude, man. And it's always great to sit down and chat with you on or off air. But today was even better.
Yeah, and we look forward to having you guys out in Nashville. This year's going to be much bigger than it was last time, if you can believe that.
I cannot believe it. And I will hydrate, get the liquid IV ready because my God, man.
If that's the case, I tell you what we're not doing is flying out the next day because
all I wanted was that hotel bed.
I was hurting already just from this
and we did that motorcycle ride the next day too.
Oh yeah, we didn't.
Didn't even bother with that.
I didn't wake up until like noon the next day.
Not even close. Maybe 1. Appreciate it, Tommy.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Tommy Stoner, D'Anthony Hollaway, I am Ross Patterson. We are the Drinkin' Bros. Good night, everyone.